Welcome to Leadership and Life Chat with your hosts, me, Becky Ames.
And me, Mark Curtis. In each episode, we'll be illustrating how success in leadership is inextricably linked with success in life.
Whether it's leadership in business, society, family or friends, we're all leaders.
Using our experiences and a range of expert guests, we'll share secrets to boosting your health, wealth and self.
So let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to Season 6 of Leadership and Life Chat. Becky, I can't believe we're back for yet another season.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
Some things have changed, some things haven't changed. And one of the things which I don't think has changed in the world, Becky, is the difficulty recruiting people into our businesses. This seems to still be a global issue, not just in the UK where we're based. So I think a great start to this series would be to focus in on maybe how as leaders we can make the right people decisions in our business, because I suspect for a lot of businesses and leaders, we haven't necessarily got a system that we follow around when we're making some of these decisions, and perhaps we feel our back is to the wall at times, and we're keeping people in our business who actually we would be better to not have in the business. Equally, perhaps got rid of some people along the way where maybe we've had a few regrets, thinking, do you know what, maybe we didn't get that one quite right either.
Yeah, I agree. I think when all this talk about how recruitment is so challenging, and we're seeing that, we're feeling it ourselves, we're seeing that with our clients, and it is absolutely true. But I think it can make us then a little bit cautious in the decisions that we might make around people. And I really think that we need to have a check on ourselves and make sure that we've got the right people in our business at the right time. Yeah,
and I was sorting through my emails the other day, and I stumbled across some notes that I'd taken. If you cast your mind back, Becky, to 2017, so just over 6 years ago, there was a group of us went down to the Excel Arena in London, and we went to a live event with Jim Collins from Good to Great fame. In these notes, I found a 7-point checklist, effectively, which Jim Collins recommended that all leaders consider when they're making people decisions. So I thought, do you know what? I went through this and I thought it's just as relevant as we sit here in, late 2023 as what it was back in 2017. The world has changed a lot in those 6 years, but actually questions which he was saying we should pose to ourselves as leaders, that they haven't changed at all. And I don't think there's any need for them to change. They're still relevant as far as I can see. So I thought, new season, new approach with episode 1 today, which is rather than going for our traditional 3 points, I'd quite like us to explore the 7 questions which Jim Collins said we should ask ourselves, because I think to try and do it in any other way would shortchange the listeners. They're all relevant, and I think when you string them all together, you get a real picture of the decision you're making as a leader around the people in your business. And I shared it with you, Becky. You would have had the notes from the time. I suspect you've got them somewhere as well. But when we put our heads together on it, we said, yeah, do you know what? These are definitely relevant and we want to share these.
Yeah, I think it's just as relevant, if not more so today. But you definitely need to think about all 7 of them in some context, don't you, to really challenge yourself as a leader on this about, have I got the right people in the business? And make sure that the fit is right. So I agree. We need to go through them all to be able to actually really understand.
And one thing which stuck in my mind, it wasn't in the notes, I can always remember at the end of it, one thing that Jim Collins stood there and said is, as a leader, you should be robust but not ruthless.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
That's stuck with me ever since he said that, and I've always thought, yeah, it's not about being ruthless. It's about being robust in your decision making. And I thought that's really stuck with me, not just on this topic, but any topic. That's always in the back of my head. And I think when it comes to people, we're dealing with people's lives. And I think it's even more important to be robust, but not ruthless from my moral point of view and ethical point of view anyway.
Definitely. And I think that works for both sides, doesn't it? You might have someone that's not quite the right fit and you need to be robust in dealing with them for the sake of the business. But you also need to be, you can't be ruthless. Clearly, as you say, we're dealing with people, but you need to be seen by your team to be doing the right thing as well. The rest of the team, and they need to respect that you will take those difficult decisions if you have to. And if you don't, you risk losing the really good people that you would rather not be losing. So this is so important in so many ways, and simply because we're feeling the pressure of recruitment doesn't mean that we should avoid making what might be a tricky decision or managing a difficult situation.
Absolutely. So I think we've whet the appetite of the listeners enough now that they're probably sitting there thinking, come on, please just hit us with the 7 points. We really want to know what they are. So let's not keep them in suspense any longer, Becky. Let's get into the 7 points, shall we? So the first one, and I think if we take it, we'll roll the 7 points out and we'll just discuss them each point as we go through. So the first one, which I had on my list of 7 questions, was, are you beginning to lose other people by keeping this person in the seat? So I think coming
Yeah.
back to what you were saying there, Becky, sometimes, if we have a troublemaker in the business, as it could be deemed, it can have a serious impact on other people in the team, and we could lose other people because of that. So I think that's a really great starting point for us as leaders when we're thinking about people decisions, just asking ourselves that question: are we losing other people because of this person who's got a seat here?
Yeah, I think if you've given someone a seat at the table in your team, whatever it looks like, you need to make sure that they should be there and that it fits well with the rest of the team and that it's not going to impact on the others in a negative way at all. And sometimes when we look at the costs of people on paper, we can forget about that, we could say we've got the right amount of resource or we need more resource, whatever. But I think that really blurs things, doesn't it? We need to come back down to the individuals and how it all fits together in the team and the impact that people's behaviours do have on others in that team. Really important. And like I say, I think otherwise you lose credibility and you lose the respect of the rest of the team if you have got someone who perhaps shouldn't be there, if they're not in the right role or not suited to the business.
Yeah, and it's the sum is greater than the parts, isn't it? As individual components, the machine doesn't necessarily work that well. When all of the cogs are kind of smoothly interlocking with each other, then the machine works really well. And it's the same with our teams, isn't it? If we've got one cog which is a bit out of alignment, that can have a massive impact on the motivation of the team, the financial output of the team. Whichever way you look at it, it's not good, is it? The machine starts to break down.
No.
So I think that's a great question to start with for the 7 which came out from Jim. Do we really have a troublemaker within this person? They might be fantastic. They might be. I think that sporting analogies are always going to be the easiest one on these ones, aren't they? You've got the star striker, who's the best striker in the world in football terms, or soccer if you're in the US. But actually, if they're kind of a bit aloof, if they kind of, it's all about them, then it can have a really, really disproportionate impact on the performance of the whole team, kind of however good they are as an individual. So we shouldn't
Yeah.
be frightened, even if they're a star striker, I think is probably the point I would take out of this.
I agree. I think, you can't manage that risk otherwise, can you? If you've got someone who's an absolute star in some respects, but their behaviours perhaps don't fit with the rest of the team and it's having a detrimental effect, you can't protect them, because what if they decide to go? Then you're left with a team that's lost, respect for you. They don't think that you're credible as a leader because you didn't deal with the issue. So whilst the short-term financial implications of your star striker being there might be fantastic, it's not a long-term strategy at all. It's not going to be sustainable. Yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. You've got to look at that.
Okay, so should we move on to the second question now? And this is almost a three-tail question within one, which is: do you have a values problem, a will problem, or a skill problem? I think probably that is the right order, isn't it? Almost, which is: do you have a values problem? Hopefully, as a business, you've got some real core values which are well documented and well woven through the fabric of your business. If you haven't, then maybe check out one of our other podcasts where we've talked about value setting within the business. But does this person really sit with your values? Are they a good fit for the business? If they're not, then again, it just might not be the right home for them. But assuming the values are aligned, and we've got alignment on the values, is it a skill problem or a will problem? And the two are obviously very different, aren't they? If we've got a skill problem, well, that's not really a problem, because we can sit down, we can work out training requirements, we can invest in those people to upskill them. That's down to us as the leaders. We've got to make sure our team are upskilled, haven't we? But if it's a will problem, Becky, then we're moving into whole new territory, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always say when you're interviewing someone for a role, I'm looking at their behaviours and how they'll fit into the team and the business, as opposed to, the skills at a certain level are almost a given, and it's all the other bits around it that's really important to us, isn't it? And I think that's the same for all business owners, leaders, that we really need to have the right people who bring that willingness and that real motivation to apply the skills that they have. And we can always refine those skills, of course we can. And we're all continuously developing and learning. We wouldn't ever want that to not be the case. But I think the will can be a really challenging one to identify at recruitment stage, certainly. So that's where, giving someone time to actually settle into a role and demonstrate that is really important. Being clear with them about what the role is, so they have clarity as well, and have the ability to influence and really drive that forwards.
For a long while, back in the day, I used to say to our HR department, I don't know why we mess around with all of these assessment type days and this test and that test. Let me just go up the pub with these people for half an hour and I can tell you straight away whether they're going to be a good fit for my team or not.
Yeah.
Because it comes down
Yeah.
to attitude effectively, doesn't it? I've always been a fan of recruiting on attitude, which is really the will part of it. The values and the will, you can just learn so much. You get someone in a false interview environment, then you don't see the real person. You just see the version that they're trying to portray in that session, So, and if they're already through the door, you're obviously going to know them a lot better and they're within your team at that point. Yeah, for me, it's very much attitude. However, on the other side of this, I think back to a young Mark, and I was a bit of an arse, really, as we've probably discussed on these podcasts before. And it was only really when I got to my probably mid-20s that I really, my attitude was pretty off at times, to be honest with you. And if I'd have carried on with that attitude, I would never have made it to partner at Larkin-Gower, and I'd have been out the door, I suspect, pretty quickly. And I have a few partners who are still in the business this day to thank for the fact that I did stay in the business and they believed in me because they saw something which they thought was worth persevering with. So I think the moral of that story is people can change. Yeah, I had a bit of a will issue, I had a bit of an attitude issue, I think probably would be fair to say, but I turned it round. So again, we want to be fair. It comes back to that, not, it's not about being ruthless, is it? And give people a chance. They can change, especially probably, without being ageist. If they're young, they're probably more likely to change when they're younger because we're still developing and growing so much at that point in time.
Yeah. And our job as when we're recruiting into our business, chatting to people, is to be able to spot that, isn't it? That potential, probably, like you say, there were people who saw that in you and you worked together as you matured and that came out. So it's a skill to be able to, recruit good people or look at your team and really understand them. And that's where we always come back to. It's so important to build relationships and to understand people. As accountants, we can be very much tarred with the brush of being, just focused on the numbers and computer screens, etc. And that's not what it's about at all. And I think if you're just focused on filling seats, making sure you've got the right number of people in a team, then you shouldn't be recruiting, because that's not the answer. It's not a long-term strategy at all. It's not going to work for you. It might work in the short term. Again, it might give you the results you need. You've got enough people there to do the work that you've got, but it's not going to be something that's going to be there for the long term. And then you're investing more time and energy and cost in terms of that whole churn of recruitment, managing people's performance, etc. So you don't want to be there. So having the right people recruiting as well is really important, so they can identify those skills and not just looking for the stuff that we can write down on paper in terms of our qualifications and experience.
So moving on to number 3 on Jim's list, on top 7 countdown with Jim. No, it's not actually. It's just number 3. Question number 3. I suddenly went into, I thought I was on the chart show or something. So if we go to question number 3, it's, what is the person's relationship to the windows and the mirror? So we've talked about this on the podcast before, but just to explain it for anyone who hasn't listened to that or heard Jim Collins or read Jim Collins' work, what he taught, this is what he comes under the 5-star leader banner. So when things go really well, the people with the really good attitude, the really high performing leaders, look out of the window and they're like, wow, my team did an amazing job. When things go suboptimal, shall we say, then they look in the mirror and they say, do you know what? How have I how did I let my team down here? What could I have done differently as a leader? And it doesn't just have to be leader; it can be anyone in the organisation. So this is the third point that Jim is saying. You know, when this person who you're considering, this decision you're having to make around someone, do they look out of the window when things go well, or do they look out of the window when things don't go well? So this really probably comes back a bit to something we've talked about a lot on the show as well, which is the internal and external locus of control. You know, do you blame others or do you take responsibility? And we did an episode on this back in April 22 called "You've Got the Power." So Jim is saying, yeah, this should very much be part of that checklist of decision making. So clearly, you know, if they're blaming others, if they've got a bit of the external locus of control, then that's not a great trait. So they, you know, it's just another piece of evidence gathering almost when you're going through trying to make decisions around people in the business.
Yeah, it's about their behaviours, isn't it? As you say, if they're too quick to blame others, not take responsibility, want to take the credit for the good stuff that happens, the results, without giving credit to others in the team who should deserve it, they're all red flags for me. And that's not the way I want a team to be. It's certainly not how I want the people in my team to feel, that they're not going to get the credit they deserve, or they're going to get blamed when they shouldn't. You know, we win as a team, and if things go wrong, then we have to assess ourselves as leaders or the intrinsic parts of the team. Why did that go wrong? Absolutely. So I think this is a really key one for me, actually, because that self-awareness in individuals is really, really quite difficult to understand sometimes, whether they're self-aware and recognize that in themselves. So if you see it in someone, how do you address it is challenging. If all other attributes mean that you would like to keep them in the business, but there's something there that's not quite right, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's often ingrained in us. I think we've both learned through all of the reading and work that we've done that you can adjust your mindset and your way of thinking. And I think if you can really promote that with the team, it's hugely valuable. And you can switch people's thinking in terms of how they can be responsible, but also take the team with them and really win as a team.
Yeah, and you know, this point, I'm sure I must have said this back on the previous episode, but my business coach always said to me, never go into business or have clients who have an external locus of control, because sooner or later something will go wrong and they'll point the finger and blame you. You know, and I think there is quite a lot of truth to that. And yes, people can change and such like, but it is quite hard work for them to have to
Yeah.
change. So you know, I get the line of least resistance is to kind of not do business with them to start with. But assuming that, you know, we are going to, and we're prepared to give people a chance, then giving people the opportunity to start to take responsibility for themselves, and that then comes back to us as leaders. You know, we have to, coming back to Jim Collins' language, we have to look in the mirror at that point. If too many of our team are not taking responsibility, could it be because we haven't created the right environment within our team? You know,
Yeah.
if we've created such a cutthroat culture, you know, it's like you have to climb over other people to climb that greasy career ladder and stuff, then we can't really be surprised if people display this kind of attitude. If we've created a really good environment where I heard a phrase the other week, if a person who blames others hasn't started the journey, a person who blames themselves is halfway along the journey, and a person who blames nobody has reached the destination. And I love that, because I thought, you know what, I get that, because actually, as soon as you blame, even if you blame yourself, you know, you're then giving yourself a good kicking up the backside as well, which, okay, we might need to do occasionally. I much prefer the no blame culture in the team, which is something I've really worked heavily on trying to embed over the last decade or more, which is, okay, something might have gone wrong. I don't really, within reason, I don't mind it's gone wrong. You know, no one's died. What can we learn from it? You know, firstly, is it a systemic problem? Have we got a problem with our processes and systems? You know, and by doing that, I suspect that people who are wavering around, am I, you know, external, internal locus of control, they're more likely to take responsibility because they feel safe as well. So I think that this one, you know, again, with all of this stuff, we have to look at it in context, don't we? You know, we can't just say tick, cross, you know.
Yeah.
If we've created a really poor environment as leaders, then this kind of question is much harder to answer, and we need to take responsibility as well.
Yeah. It's about the culture that you've set, isn't it, as leaders, about how you do business, if you like, how you lead and portray the values that you believe to be, key to the running of the business. And exactly that, if you run something that's cutthroat, then you can't be surprised when you get that sort of behavior. It's very hard not to judge quite quickly on this, isn't it? Because it is very, ingrained with some people. But again, I think you have to take all of these in the round and understand that people can change, exactly as you said before, if you give them the opportunity to do so and you create the right environment.
And probably what we're almost getting to here is that as we go through these 7 questions, I suspect that it wouldn't be healthy to kind of have a little tally at the bottom and say, right, 5 in that column and 2 in that column, right, out the door.
No.
It's painting a picture. This is more about painting a picture, and we may learn something about our organization. It might be, we haven't actually got really ingrained values which we present to the team. It is a bit cutthroat because we're trying to encourage people to progress their careers. So I think we can learn a lot about our business by looking at these 7 as well. And so for me, this is very much a piece of art as opposed to a tally list where we just go in or out. But we'll probably, I'm sure we'll touch on that as we move through. So if we move on to the 4th one, Becky, does the person see work as a job or a responsibility?
Interesting one, isn't it? Something we talk about quite a lot as a collective, I think, in terms of people's attitude to work as well. If you've got people in your team that see their role as a responsibility, they see work as a responsibility, that's when you'll really get the best out of them, and they will get the best from you as well. And we've both worked at this firm a long time, and I've always, done it on the basis of I'll give huge amounts of flexibility and I get huge flexibility back. And it's, you've got to do that, haven't you? And take responsibility for what you do. You can't, in my view, just go, it's the end of my working day and I'm off out the door if a task needs to be completed or the team need something, and, take responsibility for yourself and for your team. I don't think you can clock in and out in the type of professional service arena that we operate in, but probably the same in lots and lots of different roles. And I think people's attitudes to that, right, that's me done, I'm off for the day, can be really damaging to the team as a collective, because again, it comes back to they're in it for themselves. It's a real challenge sometimes to understand what people's motivations are.
And again, we can look at this one, I think, from us as the leaders' point of view. So the thing which is just going around my head, which we've definitely mentioned on this before, it's the old when JF Kennedy went to NASA when they were trying to put the man on the moon for the first time, and he said to the janitor, hi, I'm JFK. I guess he might have said that and shook his hand or something. And it's kind of like, what do you do here? And he's like, what's your role? And he's like, my role is to put a man on the moon. So he was the janitor, but he was so bought into the vision and the mission, what NASA had at the time. He didn't see his role. His role may have been to clean the toilets, but his real job was to be part of that team putting a man on the moon. So he may have clocked in and out, but he didn't. He saw it as a responsibility, not a job, didn't he? That guy was just so aligned with. He believed in what the mission was. So again, it comes back to our businesses. If we haven't got a very clear mission and vision, it's difficult. It's kind of difficult for people to see it as more than a job, because what are they buying into? They can be passionate about what they do. They can do it to the best of their ability, but this is almost like that extra step, isn't it? If we've created the environment where people are just like, I really want to be behind that, I just believe in what we're doing so much here, then suddenly people are going to be much more responsible rather than just seeing it as a job, because they're going to want to make sure we deliver upon this, because they're going to believe in it. They're going to think it's the best thing for, mankind, or, that your customer base or whatever it might be. They're really going to buy into it. And so again, we can challenge ourselves on this point as leaders. Have we got a clear mission and vision? If we haven't, well, separate conversation, we need to do that. If we have, then why is the person not aligned with that? Is it coming back to values again? Is it coming back to will and skill? It's coming back to the other points maybe, but why are they not seeing it? Why are they just seeing it as a job?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I absolutely take your point about you can still clock in and out, can't you? But it's what you do with that time in between, and whether you're using it effectively because you understand what the purpose is. Where are we going? What's the goal here of the team? And it's about being on board with that and understanding the vision, as you say, however big or small. And what is the bigger picture? Where are we going? And if we're not clear with our teams about that, if we're not clear with our people, then we can't expect them to be engaged and really on board. It's up to us to make sure we get that message across. And sometimes I think we struggle with that, perhaps because we're not clear. And I think if we haven't got it straight in our own heads, it's very difficult for us to live and breathe that as well. So it's so important that we are clear and then communicating it well and making sure that people understand what their role is, how they fit into the direction of travel, where we're going. It comes back to your cogs, doesn't it, that you mentioned earlier?
Absolutely. So moving on to question 5, has your confidence in the person gone up or down in the last year?
Oh, that's tricky, isn't it? It's so subjective. All of these are, I guess. But I think that's a really difficult one, because we all know in our absolute core, don't we, if someone has gone up or down in our estimations, and we sometimes know why, but that doesn't mean we know how to address it or what to do about it. And I think if you lose confidence in someone, it's very difficult to get back to where you were. Often if someone has been performing well and then for whatever reason they're not quite meeting your expectations, it's difficult. They kind of almost have to go the extra mile to get back to where perhaps they were, and really almost excel, take things that much further. So it's a tough thing, and I think we have to always make sure we're being fair, like you say, being robust, not ruthless when we're thinking about this. Is it, we're only human? Is it just something personal that's affected our view of them, and actually everything is still as it should be and they're performing at the right level and it's still working in the team? Or is there something fundamental that we do need to address? And it can be very difficult to do that, to challenge on that point. Tricky, because we know in our gut.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think out of all of the 7, and we'll obviously get on to the last 2 shortly, this is the one which feels the most subjective, because, as you say, it becomes almost self-fulfilling, if you like, doesn't it? If you're the leader and things are not quite going right with this person because of various reasons, it you see what you focus on to as well, don't you? So like, the more you're looking at this, the more you're going to find as well. So I'm with you. I think that has your confidence gone up or down in this person? Yeah, it's a very, very tricky one, because I suspect it would be very difficult to be very objective around this one. But I guess it's come back to what we said earlier. It's just painting a picture, isn't it? These are not like yes, and they obviously are yes and no's, but the answer is much more nuanced than that, and it's very much painting an overall picture. And if your confidence has been going down in this person and their attitude has really gone south, and and all this other stuff is going on, then it just starts to paint a bigger picture. Maybe there is something underlying there. So I'm with you. It's a tricky one, but it's just another one in the mix, isn't it? So if we move on to question 6 of Jim's 7, do you have a bus problem or a seat problem? So before I throw that one over to you, Becky, I'll just, for the benefit of the listeners, in case they haven't come across it before, Jim Collins talks about getting the right people on the bus. So the bus is your business. You recruit people in to your business, not because you know what seat they're going to sit on necessarily, but you bring them in because they're just the right person to come into your organization. So they're on the bus. So have you got a seat problem? Well, you've got the right person, but maybe you're just not using them in the way which is going to suit their skill set the best. So that's the context effectively of what Jim is talking about here, isn't it? So over to you, Becky.
Yeah, so initially you have to say, have you got the right people on the bus? Are they the right fit for the organisation, which we've kind of talked around previously. But then, like you say, it's once they're in the business, have you found the right role for them, and have they expressed what they actually would want to do? And I think there's nothing like actually saying to people, are you fulfilled? Do you feel like you are doing what you want to do? It might be that people surprise you. And all of these really come down to understanding your people, don't they? If you don't understand them and it's the whole, it's not just what they bring to work, it is the whole, then you've got no chance of understanding these aspects. So I think it's as ever, these things take effort and time. You have to invest time in understanding your people and talking to them and finding out what motivates them and where their real skills lie. But I think if you do that, sometimes people really surprise you. They might have come into the business for one role and actually they'll be so well suited to something else. We've seen this in our own business. Or people develop over time and they develop particular interests and skills and specialisms. And, you need to not put someone on a seat on our bus and then not allow them to potentially move around at any point, try different things, and see where, their fit really could add value to your business.
And as you say, it's kind of different people will flourish in different roles, won't they? So if you've recruited them in because they've got the right attitude and they very much buy into your values, your vision, the mission you're on, then it's pretty unlikely, unless things have changed considerably, it's very unlikely to be a bus issue at that point, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's more likely to be a seat issue. So then it's just a case of working out, how do we get this person to feel engaged again? How do we get the best out of them, and how do they get the best out of themselves? Of course, we might have changed the bus. We may have had a change of managing director in the business or something, and there could be a change of direction of the business. So maybe the bus is a different color to what it was when the person came on board it. So I guess in those circumstances, you could end up with a bus problem, because actually it's down to you, not the individual,
Yeah.
but it's just working that one through, isn't it?
Yeah. And it could be, if someone came on board for all the right reasons, but then they haven't developed in the same way that the business has, in the direct, like you say, if there's been a change of leadership or something and the direction of the business has shifted, then it's recognizing that. And for me, it's about, even if people were in the right seat at one point, that might not be the right seat forever. So you do have to keep this under review and consider that perhaps it's not the business itself that's wrong for them, but just the role that you've got them in, and make some tricky decisions in that way. Where would they be a better fit?
Yeah. So the final question that we have to ask ourselves of Jim's 7 is, how would you feel if this person quit?
I like this one because this is it's a real test, isn't it? Like, you ask yourself that and you instantly know. So I think
Mm,
this it could almost be the
yeah.
first question. This is like the real, cut everything else out. If this person came in this morning and said, I'm off, how would you feel? And I think that's really telling. I think you then have to moderate that with all of the other bits, as you say, this picture we're painting. Why am I thinking that? But again, gut feel is often, we shouldn't deny it. We shouldn't argue ourselves out of things if we absolutely are like, actually, yeah, I get it. Sometimes it's not because either that you feel it's the right thing necessarily for the business, but it might be the right thing for that person, and that they're just not happy, motivated, satisfied in the role. And as much as you might want to keep them, it's just not going to be right. So again,
Yeah.
a tricky one, but I do think this one is probably like, don't overthink it. What is your initial reaction? Because that can be really telling.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that whole kind of
Mm.
intuition, gut instinct, yes, we can't always rely on gut instinct. We know that, it's, we have to do, we have to have some kind of evidence to back stuff up as well. And I think from what I've read around the topic, a lot of the top business leaders around the world very much operate 50-50. It's like evidence-based and intuition, and if the two line up, then happy days. And there's more and more scientific stuff coming out around the gut is the second brain. There's a direct highway between the gut and the brain. So this stuff isn't just based on biases, is it? Some of this stuff is actually
No.
because maybe we have an inherent feeling, intuitive feeling about what is right and wrong. And I love the test on this one. It's, if people can't make a decision, just as a little thing we can all try here, and I've definitely used this one myself. If someone's like, not sure, shouldn't I, get a coin and say, right, Becky, heads, the person goes, tails, they stay. flick it, right, heads, they're going to go. And that instant reaction, once you've kind of stripped away everything else, tells you so much. So if you're struggling a bit to kind of reach a decision on something, just the flick of a coin, it doesn't mean it's going to give you the right answer, but it strips away all of the crap effectively, and it allows you to get through to how you're really feeling about something. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a good test, isn't it? Which is, I suspect some of the time it's going to be, oh God, it's going to be a bit of a pain if this person goes. But you're not actually going, oh, I'd be so gutted if this person goes. There's a massive difference between the two, isn't there? So yeah. I like that one. So that takes us through the 7 points, the 7 questions which Jim recommends we consider when thinking about people decisions, so we end up being robust in our decision making and not ruthless. We've explored a lot around those, Becky, and I think what came out for me during the conversation is not just the 7 questions, but actually some of them we as leaders can have a really big impact on what the answers might be. So, do we have a clear mission and vision? Have we got clear values? Have we created an environment where people are afraid to take responsibility because it's so cutthroat, it might impact on their careers, So I think there's a lot of things coming out of this, which I didn't expect to come out, to be honest, when we hit record today. I thought we were just going to talk around the 7 points and help business leaders, including ourselves, reach more robust decisions around people decisions. But it's actually broadened out much further than that.
Yeah. It comes back to internal, external locus of control, doesn't it? Because if you're going to ask these questions without thinking about how what you've put in place and your behaviours and your attitudes aren't going to affect anyone else, then that's just ridiculous. So I think it is really challenging ourselves to make sure that we've got everything in place that we should have to allow our people to perform at their best. And if they're not, then absolutely we've got to deal with it. But I think it comes back to us first as leaders, because if we're not being clear with them about what their role is, what the vision is, how they play a part in the team, what the opportunities might be, then we're setting them up to fail. So we need to be clear so that they can then be held to account if necessary, allowed to flourish, give them a bit of space to do so. I often see leaders who aren't quite sure themselves and therefore aren't able to communicate it clearly, and then wonder why they don't get the results that they want from their people. It comes back to investing that time to actually be clear yourself, for me.
Yeah, thank you. So hopefully there's some real value there today for the leaders listening to this show, not only in terms of hopefully a 7-point process you can work through when you're making your people decisions, but maybe also stimulating some thought there about, okay, so maybe there's some areas of our business we need to work on as well to really help our people as well, because ultimately, as you said, we want everyone rowing in the same direction. We want the boat to go faster by rowing in the same direction. So there's things we could all probably do differently off the back of this to help that happen as well. So if you didn't manage to jot down the 7 questions, don't worry. We're going to put them in the show notes to save you having to go back and listen again. So they'll be in the show notes. Have a look at those. If you've enjoyed today's show, then please rate and review us on your chosen platform. It really does help other people find us. And if you can give us 5 stars, that's even better. Thank you. Also, a massive thank you to our sponsors, Larkin Gowan, accountants and business advisors. Without their support, this show wouldn't be possible. So take a look at their website, follow the link to see how their team of experts can help you and your business. And that just leaves us to say, have a great week, everybody. Take care of yourself and boost your health, wealth, and self.